Hello, Emporium Alliance Church and friends. It's a privilege once again to have a time together to study God's Word. As you know, maybe you don't know, but we have, first week of February, we have started back again the meetings in person at the church. So whenever you're ready, we will be glad to have you and to spend time together. But as we are together today, and maybe you are still at home, maybe it's a day where you don't feel well, and we just want to make sure that you know how much we love you, how much we care for you, and we are so eager to hear from you. This year, the Lord has put in my heart that the overarching theme of the year will be stories. Stories that it infuses, that it brings and inspires faith in us. So there are so many stories that God is doing, of what God is working among us, and I just want to encourage you that if you have those stories to share with somebody, share them with us. That will be fantastic. But don't keep those stories of how you see God moving just for yourself. In this new season, we're gonna start with something is called rebuilding in faith. Rebuilding in faith is different than rebuilding something on my own strength. We just want to make sure that we are following God's steps. So for that, we're going to be starting the book of Nehemiah. I really don't know how far we're going to go or how many series, but I just feel the Lord leading us to this idea of rebuilding. Rebuilding because we are starting a new year. There are new conditions among us, and last year has been a challenge, and as challenging as it has been, this year feels that you are just rebuilding. That have to start over in some areas. Some areas you have to change things. Some areas you just start afresh. And so know that there is no better place to start but to start reading Nehemiah. And I'll tell you why Nehemiah is because there's a story that Nehemiah is a person who responded to God's call to rebuild the walls of the city of Jerusalem, and when it was a very, very critical time and nobody thought that was going to be possible. So I wonder today, what are the things that needs to be rebuilt among us? You can see different areas. Maybe you have some areas in your life, in your family, in your house that needs to be rebuilt. And I'm not meaning just in a physical way, but it could be that your marriage needs rebuilding. Maybe it can be that your spiritual life needs rebuilding. That maybe a ministry where you have been involved or are involved needs rebuilding, needs to be starting over. I don't know what it is, but I just want to start this journey together. And I want to start with just one question. For you, what makes something ordinary? I mean, what makes a day ordinary or extraordinary? We all have different definitions of it, so I just want to encourage you to take a moment right now with whoever you are with, and if not, just call a friend and just, hey, let's have a chat together. What makes a day ordinary for you or extraordinary? And let's have this time together. I'll see you in a few minutes. I hope that you had this time together, spending the time and thinking about what makes something ordinary or extraordinary. And for that, I want to read together first verses in Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 1 to 10. I'm reading from the NIV. This is what it says. The words of Nehemiah, son of Hakaliah. In the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, while I was in the citadel of Susa, Hanani, one of my brothers, came from Judah with some of other men. And I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that survived the exile and also about Jerusalem. They said to me, those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down and its gates have been burned with fire. When I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and I fasted and I prayed before the God of heaven. I wanted to stop right there. It's a great beginning. Why do I say it's a great beginning? It's because Nehemiah starts talking and says, These are the words of Nehemiah, son of Hakaliah. Means that he's trying to make a point that I'm writing this letter. This was no joke. This is who I am. This is where I am, and this is what family I belong to. Making a point that this was real. There was not made up. And all of a sudden he talks about a story that happened, and he starts telling this story of what he had heard here, where he was in the citadel of Susa, and one of my brothers came and shared with me the situation from Judah. It's a kind of crazy story, because all of a sudden we see that there is a different movement. There is something that changes the history and the life of Nehemiah and the life of other people. So I want to tell you that in reality there has never been an ordinary day. We are the ones who makes a day ordinary or extraordinary based on how do we respond to the extraordinary God. God is always making a day extraordinary. We are the ones that call it ordinary because we are used to wake up, go to work, toil, come back, do what we need to do, gather with our family, say hi, bye, rest a little bit, hopefully talk a little bit to our spouses, and then go back. Sorry, not spouses, spouse. And so in the process of all that, we repeat, and we lose track of many things that God is doing among us. So in this passage, we see that all of a sudden that God intervenes in a time and in a day. God intervenes our lives. The question is, are we aware that God is always intervening or giving us opportunities or invitations to us to respond? We don't always are aware of that. We not always respond to that call, because as we were seeing last week, that is God who invites us, but it is us who invites God also to say yes to his invitation. We let him move in us and through us. So in reality, today is not an ordinary day. I want to quote Hebrews chapter 3 verse 15 from the version of ESV that says this: "And it is said today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as in the rebellion." So maybe today is the day where you start hearing the voice of God, maybe not audible, but in some other ways that you feel the move of God towards doing something different, to engage into a different kind of adventure. Maybe it's small, maybe it's big, maybe it's just a fact of paying attention to God, to whom you have been saying, later, I don't know. So we see that Nehemiah is in the center of the biggest empire back then. And he is in a citadel, meaning a fortified city of Susa. And we see that he is there, and there are other people that have been coming and going from where they were in the center of the empire to the city or the place where they originally came from, that now is in ruin. So we have people that have been traveling, and we have those that lives in the place where the story is told of. So we see that there are people, the remnant of people that went back to the province, those who survived the exile and are back in the province. And they're telling this story that the description says that those who are there, the province, those back in the province are in great trouble and in disgrace. How is your normal reaction to about that? Those that you hear that are in trouble and disgrace? Nehemiah, all of a sudden, he felt it. He felt it in his heart, and we saw that God cares. God cares for people. God sees you where you're at. Maybe I don't know where you what your condition is. Maybe you are right now. You might be in bed. You might be going through depression. I don't know. Maybe you are isolated. Maybe I don't know your reality. But sometimes we have this in the back of our minds. We have this broken record that says, "Well, nobody cares. Nobody sees me. Nobody knows anything about me, and I don't have anybody close." Maybe even when you are with other people, that you feel that you are alone. I don't know what's your story, but I just want to let you know that God cares, that God sees you. How do we know that? It's because God starts moving and sharing stories about something that is not right. And he cares for those that lives in an awful condition in Jerusalem. He sees you where you're at, no matter where you're at, no matter if you think that you're in the center of the universe or if you think that you are in a place that nobody really cares. You know, we all have heard the stories. Well, who knows? Like, who knows about this town? Who knows about this place? Who cares? I'm not in it. We feel less important. And we see that God cares also because God is the one who connects people. All of a sudden, do you think that it's a coincidence that this news got to the ears of Nehemiah? God connects people. Nehemiah, who was in a comfy place in a foreign land, in the center of the known universe back then, he is in a very lofty place and he's moved to compassion. And as he's moved to compassion, verse 4 says, "And sat down and wept for some days, and I mourned and I fasted and I prayed before the God of the heaven." We see this heart of compassion. That reminds me another verse. In Matthew 20:32 to 34, then NET version of the Bible says this: "Moved with compassion, Jesus touched their eyes. Immediately they received their sight and followed him." When we move to compassion, what we are seeing is we are mirroring the heart of God. God is the one who feels the compassion. Notice that the reason why Jerusalem was in that condition is because as a consequence of their own sin, of their own stubbornness. But God still, even when they are paying the consequence of their own sin or their parents' sin, then God reaches out to them no matter what. We see that God is a God of compassion, that God reaches towards us and in our environments and changes an ordinary day that as we see it into an extraordinary day by sharing his heart. So I want to finish today with this idea to start this season of rebuilding. I just want to let you know that God sees you even when you think that nobody sees you and nobody cares. God does. Remember that. And if you have a problem seeing it, if you're watching this video, it's because God cares about you. Now, you need to pay attention to the movement of compassion in your heart. Maybe you are like, well, I'm okay, so how? Just pay attention, because that's one of the ways that God speaks. Maybe you not hear an audible voice, but you hear and you are moved to compassion to different things. So next time we're going to be talking about what's the difference in between feeling an emotion and feeling compassion. Does compassion has a level of emotions? Yeah, but is a difference? Of course. Are just simply one thing? No, God moves us. We have been wired in some way, shapes, and form that are ways in which God speaks to us too. Maybe you don't notice that, but if you know Jesus, if you have been walking with Jesus, somebody said the other day in a meeting where I was, we are the Bibles that people are reading. Because if they don't pick up the Bible, they should be able to see Jesus in us, right? So they be able to read the Bible through us. You are the expression of God's love in the community around you. So people will notice or pick up the hint of God's compassion if they have not seen, pay attention to God's creation and his love for us, but they will see it through you and through me. So the question is, Am I responding to God's invitation to be the hands and feet of Jesus in my community? And I want to finish with this line that says this, that responding to God's invitation always transforms an ordinary day into an extraordinary day, simply because we are opening the doors for God to move in and through us. So the reality is that love does. Love is action. So what is Jesus' invitation to you today? I don't have a way to answer that, but I hope that you can share with us what's God's invitation. What do you feel like God's invitation for you is? How God has been moving you to compassion. I'm eager to hear what God will do in us and through us and how He's going to bless our community. But I just want to close back again with this. If you hear God's voice today, do not harden your heart, but say yes to Jesus. Love you. Pastor Lionel, long to hear from you. See you soon.